All right, here we are. Some lectures, some thoughts, some things, continuation. This will be lecture 4 in the series, and we're talking about the masks here. And today I'm going to talk about the resume mask. And at some point in your life, maybe early, maybe gradually over time, you signed a contract. Not on paper, not consciously, but you signed it. And the terms were clear, even if they were never spoken. The contract said if you deliver, you get seen. And I mean really seen. If you excel, you get accepted. And if you stay ahead, you stay safe. And in exchange for those things, you agreed to build your identity around what you produce. Okay. The resume mask is the identity that lives inside that contract. It's the part of a person that has learned at a level deep enough to feel like truth that output equals worth. Okay. Achievement. It sort of says like achievement equals permission to live. That productivity equals the right to exist in the room without justification. You don't have to earn your space for breath. Okay. This is the mask of the high performer, the overachiever, the person who always has an answer and always takes the extra project and really always manages to be the most prepared person every time they enter any space. Now, I want to be clear about something before we go any further, because this is the mask most likely to resist being named. The resume mask produces things that the culture genuinely rewards. Honestly, our society loves this mask. Success, recognition, advancement, this measurable results, ROI, in a world that is organized almost entirely around production and performance. This mask is not a problem for most people. It's not a liability. It's not like somebody comes to the table and goes, man, I tell you, that person is just so productive. We need to talk. We need to have a conversation about that. It's almost like an asset. The market loves it. Organization and companies build incentive structures specifically designed to reward it. And the person wearing it gets consistent external reinforcement and validation that tells them that their way of being in the world is not just acceptable, but it should be praised. It's admirable. Okay, that reinforcement is what makes this particular mask the hardest to see. When a mask produces social reward, the motivation to examine it is almost non-existent. I won't say it's not existent, but it is almost not. It's very low. I mean, why in the world would you look really, really closely at something that's working so well? Why interrogate the identity that's getting you everything the culture's told you that you want? Well, the answer is because the culture and its definition of working and your actual definition or your actual experience of your life are not the same thing. And at some point, if you're paying attention, almost knocked my coffee over, live, the gap between these things becomes impossible to ignore. And it looks like this. This gap, it looks like this. You achieve the goal, the promotion, the milestone, the project delivered on time, perfect. The recognition arrived. You're the perfect friend, the perfect mother, the perfect father, whatever it may be in the output. And for a moment, for a brief and genuine moment, it feels like proof, like confirmation, right? Like the accounting has come out right. Everything's balanced. And then faster than you expected, the finish line moves. No rest, no space. A new goal appears. A new standard asserts itself. A new comparison becomes available. And the sense of okayness, of like, wow, I can breathe, that this achievement was supposed to deliver, dissolves before it has even had a chance to settle. And you're back in the motion. You're back in the pursuit. You're back in this posture as a person who's not done enough to be at rest. And that cycle is not ambition. That's not ambition. Okay? I want to say that directly. Ambition, genuine ambition, is someone who pursues what is theirs because they're drawn to it. And I know this is redundant. I've talked about this over and over again. But the cycle I'm describing is a person producing to prevent the arrival of a feeling that they have learned is dangerous. The production is not in service of desire, it's in service of anxiety management. And that distinction, while it may look the same, it's almost identical from the outside, has completely different cost on the inside. So let's look at the texture of this thing, all right? I want to describe what this resume mask actually feels like from the inside, because I've spoken, honestly, with thousands of people who wear it, and the interior inner space experience is remarkably consistent. There's a baseline hum of productivity anxiety. Sometimes it's not even aware, but it's a low grade but constant awareness of what has not yet been done, what could be done better, what should be added to the list, and so on and so forth, okay? And for this person, it's not really paralyzing. I mean, it can become paralyzing sometimes, but that's later. It's not really paralyzing. In fact, it's sometimes experienced as motivation. It's the drive, it's the fire, as the quality that makes you productive. But underneath the productivity, there is a question running that you've learned not to examine too closely. What happens if I stop? Not just for a day, stop in the deeper sense. What happens to the sense of myself if the output were to genuinely just stop? See, most resume mask people have never genuinely tested this. They've been sick, they've been on vacation, they've been in transitions between roles, and have noticed the anxiety that arrives when the production framework is not available. I was sick for 16 weeks with an infection, and that's what drove me most crazy. But what happens is when the framework is not available to produce, they've always returned to production quickly enough that the question resolves before it has to be fully faced. Oh, I'm back to the grind. I'm back to me, being me. The anxiety comes, and then the next project starts, and the anxiety recedes. And they note to self, I feel so much better when I'm working, when I'm producing, when I'm building. And they call that preference when it's really dependency. The relationships of a strong resume mask person have a particular quality to them. There's genuine warmth and care and compassion, but those relationships are very organized to the degree that a person is usually not fully aware around the performance. They're not really aware of the performance around them. And the performance, the centerpiece, the center of the target that they're always trying to hit is competence. They're more comfortable in roles of expertise or leadership than vulnerability or need, and they find it easier to help than to receive help. They're better at giving advice than disclosing uncertainty. To say I don't know would be like a terrible thing, you know. And in their closest relationship, there's a ceiling. Oftentimes, there's a ceiling beyond which genuine intimacy does not penetrate, because real intimacy, real connection, requires showing the version of themselves that does not know, that is unsure, that is not ahead of the situation, that is not prepared, and that version has been trained into invisibility. Okay? Children of resume mask parents, and I'm going to say this not to produce guilt because I have them, right? But to shine light on this, to illuminate, often report growing up with a very clear sense that their parents' love was genuine, but that the parents' presence was slightly elsewhere. In the next project, busy right now, milestone, planning the next achievement, focusing on the work. The body was in the room, but the person was not. The child learned from this a version of the same contract. Importance is measured in productivity. Presence means you are behind. If I got time to listen to this or look at that or think about this, then I'm failing. The internal language of the resume mask is recognizable once you know to listen for it. It sort of sounds like, you know what, I'll rest when this is done. I'm going to take time for that when this season passes. Oh, this is just something I need to get through. This is just a short stretch. I'm not built for slowness. Oh, I thrive under pressure. I love deadlines. I mean, these sentences are true in the sense that they're accurately describe the person's current experience, but they are not descriptions of freedom. They are descriptions of a person who has built their entire operating system, their entire internal voice on top of an anxiety that has never been addressed, and who has become expert enough at high performance that the system looks from the outside like health. There's also a particular relationship to failure that marks the resume mask. Failure is not experienced as information. It's an absolute verdict. It's not a verdict on the quality of the work, it's a verdict on the person. A failed project is not just something, oh man, that didn't work out. A failed project is evidence for a case that has been building since the contract was signed. The case that without the achievement, there is not enough. That the self, stripped of its production, does not hold. The mask knows, at some level, that this case is always in session, and failure is the strongest evidence the prosecution has. This is why resume mask people, they either avoid failure entirely through over-preparation and risk management, or they move so quickly from failure to next attempt that the feeling of failure never has time to land. Both strategies serve the exact same function, and that's to keep the verdict from being delivered. You never get to that place. Mr. Foreman, do you have a verdict? You never get there, because the person wearing the mask does not know whether the case would hold if they actually sat with it. And the not knowing, the ambiguity, the limbo, which will require stillness and openness, is more frightening than the continuous motion that prevents it. So let me just spend a few minutes on where this comes from. I don't want to assign blame, but when we know where things come from, we can understand and see the mask clearly. The origin helps us to understand it a little bit. So the resume mask is almost always at its root a relational adaptation. It was built in response to a specific quality of environment, usually one in which love or approval or belonging were experienced as partially. I'm not trying to make an indictment. It's not about that. Partially conditional on performance, okay? Which I had that experience. And it wasn't that that was true, it's how it was perceived, okay? This does not require a harsh or neglectful environment. Some of the most, amazing people, resume mask people that I've worked with came from families that were genuinely loving. Some of the most hard-nosed resume people, that just resume mask people that just, they came from very loving families. The conditionality was subtle. A parent who was sort of more engaged when the child was succeeding than when the child was struggling. There was a lot of, I'm so proud of you, a household where achievement was the primary shared language of connection. A school environment where the child's identity in the peer group was built entirely on academic or extracurricular performance. A community, maybe a church, where certain kinds of visible contribution were the primary currency of belonging. In those environments, the child learned something true about the environment and then made a mistake about what the learning meant. What they learned when I perform well, connection happens more reliably. What they conclude is, I am only worth connecting with when I perform well. See, the first sentence is an accurate reading of the environment. The second one is a false generalization that became an indictment. But once the generalization is made and reinforced over time, it becomes the operating principle. And that principle, repeated over and over and over again, becomes the identity, becomes the self. It's also worth naming that some specific cultural moment we're in, because, I'm going to go here. The resume mask does not operate in a vacuum. We live in a culture of metrics, visibility, productivity, influence, and we worship all that stuff. And the worship of all that stuff actively reinforces this mask at every level. Social media has created a global infrastructure for the performance of achievement and the measurement of worth in engagement, likes, interest, things of that nature. The startup culture celebrates the sacrifice of rest for momentum. The hustle ideology, the hustle narrative, has been so thoroughly mainstream that operating from genuine need for pace or seeking depth or even pausing to ask questions reads as laziness in comparison. The culture is not causing the resume mask in individuals, but it is providing an extraordinarily powerful reinforcement system that almost makes it hard to question and a lot easier just to keep. So let's look at the person underneath this mask. I want to be very specific about who is underneath the resume mask, because I think there is a fear in the person wearing it that what is underneath is smaller than the mask, less capable, less impressive, less worth seeing. And that fear is almost always exactly wrong. What I find consistently underneath the resume mask is a person with genuine creative intelligence. I mean, beyond what the world could even fathom. Real depth of care, an authentic desire to contribute to the world, and a capacity for presence that the performance has literally been covering up and holding back for years. The qualities that make the resume mask person a high performer are real. The intelligence is real, the drive is real, the capability is real. What is not real is the contract that says those qualities are the condition for worthiness. The difference between a person living from the resume mask and a person who has separated from it is not the absence of productivity. It is the source of the productivity. A person still inside the mask produces to prevent this arrival of worthlessness. A person who has done this work produces because production is genuine expression of something that lives in them. And this work meaning what we talk about every day. The output looks similar from the outside, but the inner space, the interior experience is entirely different. One is anxious at rest. The other is settled and resting. One measures the work against the constantly moving standard of sufficiency or efficacy, and the other knows what done actually looks like. So practical movement away from the resume mask begins with a single experiment. Before you open anything in the morning, before you look at your messages or your tasks, calendar, why don't you define one meaningful outcome for the day? One, not 40 tasks. One outcome. The single thing that would represent genuine movement in the direction that actually matters to you today. And then you protect the time to move that outcome forward. And at the end of the day, you stop. Not when everything is done, because everything is never done. When the outcome has been moved, that is done. See, it sounds like, what is this going to do? This is so small. It is not small. Take it from the resume mask guru. Because what it does is to begin to install the evidence, is what I talked about this morning in Unbound Live. The evidence that you can produce from intention rather than from anxiety. That you can define sufficiency and then actually stop when you reach it. That the sense of okayness does not require the account to be perpetually in surplus. It just requires only what is genuinely yours, was genuinely expressed. That's what it requires. Are you expressing what is yours? And that is available every day, regardless of what the metrics say. I mean, envision, picture for a minute, a version of your life where the work is still significant, excellent, yours, genuinely, but where the end of the workday does not feel like you're abandoning a court case, where a week of lower output doesn't produce a particular collapse on the inside that you have learned to call burnout, where a project failing is experienced as information rather than a verdict against who you are. Where the person at the desk has a settled relationship with their own worth that does not require the desk to confirm it. See, that version of you is not less productive. In almost every case I have encountered, they are more productive, myself included. Not because they're trying harder, because they're no longer using a significant portion of their energy to manage the anxiety underneath the work. The energy that was going into the management becomes available for the work itself. And work from that place has a quality to it that work from anxiety just cannot build. The resume mask says your worth is on trial when you open your laptop. Your actual identity says the work is an expression of something that is already real before the laptop ever opened. Learning to live from that second one instead of the first one is the work. And it is available. I'm James Tippins, and this is Unbound, Freedom for Life. Let's set you free. How do I turn this off? See ya.